Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa polisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan din ng kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag polisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan!
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socio-economic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan din ng kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socio-economic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
We will begin shortly in 2 minutes. Thank you for your... Good morning. We are now going to start the program. The Philippines is at the forefront of Southeast Asia's rapidly expanding digital economy, driven by the emergence of cutting-edge information and communications technologies, and propelled even further by the unprecedented impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The nation has witnessed a profound digital transformation. This transformative journey has given rise to innovative business models, groundbreaking products and services, and revolutionized how businesses are conducted. Realizing the immense potential of digital technologies, the Philippines can unlock significant economic growth and pave the way for inclusive and sustainable development. However, it is observed that the degree to which the country can fully harness the vast opportunities offered by these technologies hinges on its ability to bridge the digital divide and address critical policy issues. This is according to Orbeta 2023. Hence, the Ateneo de Manila University and the Philippine Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Study Network are co-hosting this symposium with the theme Empower, Include, Grow, Unlocking Inclusive Growth in the Philippines and the Asia Pacific region, which is a replication from Peru's APEC 2024 hosting. Their theme was Empower, Include, Grow, highlighting how innovation and digitalization can promote transition to the formal and global economy, particularly the most vulnerable. This symposium aims to answer two key questions. The first question is, what are the most pressing challenges in the Philippines pertaining to the inclusion in the global economy, and what are some innovative and sustainable solutions that may address them? The other one is, what are the recent developments in the Asia Pacific region pertaining to innovation and digitalization? To our distinguished guests, our professional networks, our student participants, colleagues in academia and government work, once again, a pleasant morning. I am Luis Sabal, a faculty member and chairperson of the Department of Economics of Xavier University Ateneo de Cagayan, and an alumnus and a PhD student of economics here in Ateneo de Manila. I will be your host for this morning. We would also want to acknowledge our participants from Zoom and Facebook Live. To formally begin this symposium will be two opening remarks to be delivered by two distinguished gentlemen. First, to give an opening remark is Dr. Aniceto C. Orbeta Jr., who is the current president of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, where he has also served as a senior research fellow since 1992. He was a professorial lecturer at the University of the Philippines School of Economics, UPSE, and a visiting researcher at the Asian Development Bank Institute. His research interests include education, labor market, social protection, demographic economics, and information and communication technologies. He participated in the impact evaluation of programs and policies in education, social protection, judicial reforms, community-driven development, water services, agriculture, and agricultural finance with the Philippine national government agencies, multilateral and bilateral institutions, and international non-government organizations. He has a PhD in economics from UPSE and did postdoctoral studies at Harvard University. Friends, let us give a round of applause to Dr. Baines Orbeta.
Morning, Simanjuntak. Father Roberto, President of Ateneo, Secretary Marcos Punsalang, Director General of APEC National Secretariat, Dr. Philip Duanio, the Dean of School of Government, Dr. Porio, my daughter's teacher here, Department of Sociology and Anthropology. Mr. Gerald Gracius Pascua, Lecturer of Department of Economics, Ateneo. Mr. Eldo Simanjuntak, APEC Policy Support Unit. Dr. Ramolit Zapia, my colleague, Senior Research Fellow at PIDS. Dr. Sir Percival Reyes, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Ateneo. Dr. Jocelyn Silero, Assistant Professor, ASEAN Center, University of the Philippines. Mr. John Oy Sabal, Doctor from Xavier University, Ateneo de Manila. Other Ateneo colleagues of Ms. Christina Likpala, Assistant Vice President of the University Partnership Internationalization. Mr. Edwin Gilly Dison, Officer in Charge of the Chinese Studies Program, School of Social Sciences. PASCN Steering Committee members, Dr. Lawrence Tapuy, Professor at University Fellow at the De La Salle University. Dr. Julius Rilampagos, Assistant Professor of University of San Carlos. Other government colleagues, Director Libby Ostona Jr. of Anti-Terrorism Council, Program Management Center, Director Inalin Department of Labor and Employment, Vice Mayor Jake Rimoto Lagunoy Camarines Sur. Other PN member network representatives, colleagues from government, academe, and civil society. I am pleased to welcome you to this symposium on Empower, Include, Grow, Unlocking the Inclusive Growth of the Philippines and the Asia Pacific region. As we gather here at the Ateneo de Manila University in partnership with the Philippine APEC Study Center Network, let's reflect on how innovation and digitalization can promote the transition, formal economy, and drive inclusive development across the region. Philippines is at the forefront of digital transformation sweeping across Southeast Asia. COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the adoption of digital technologies, leading to an emergence of new technologies, business models, and opportunities. By bridging the digital divide and implementing smart policies, Philippines can harness these technologies to unlock significant economic growth and create a more inclusive society. However, the APEC region still faces a persistent challenge of informality. Recent analysis by the APEC Policy Support Unit estimates that the informal sector accounted for over 13% of GDP in 2020. Formal workers, often among the most vulnerable, earn 40 to 60% less than their formal counterpart. Part of the APEC's inclusion agenda, the host economy of Peru has rightly put this critical issue on the table for the first time. Throughout today's symposium, our esteemed speakers will share their insights on the pressing challenges faced by our country and the region. They will discuss how to advance formalization through an enabling policy mix, including developing skills, leveraging technology, improving access to capital markets, enhancing social protection, and building trust. These discussions will draw from the latest research and insights from Ateneo, PASCN, and the broader economic community. As a developing economy, the Philippines experience is striving for inclusive growth holds valuable lessons for the region. Our Philippine Development Plan sets out an ambitious economic and social transformation agenda with empowerment and inclusion at the core. By sharing our perspective, we can contribute to shaping APEC's efforts to promote inclusive and equitable. Ultimately, the challenges we face are interconnected, borderless, and issues such as climate change, rapid technological shifts, and rising inequality demand collective perspective. We can only build a future of shared prosperity by working together across economies, stakeholders, etc. It is in this spirit that we seize this opportunity to deepen partnership, learn from each other, and unlock the region's immense human and economic potential. Together, we can realize this vision of an Asia Pacific that empowers, includes, and enables all. Thank you, and I wish everyone productive solution.
Thank you, Sir Babes. At this juncture, the 31st President of the co-organizer, the Ateneo de Manila University, will deliver his opening message. He is a Filipino priest, economist, and educator appointed to the position by the Board of Trustees of Ateneo de Manila University. Father Bobby, as he is commonly known, was most recently president of my university, Xavier University Ateneo de Cagayan, from 2011 to 2020. Some of the notable events during his term as Xavier Ateneo president was the school's involvement in the recovery and rehabilitation efforts of Axios home city, Cagayan de Oro post-Typhoon Sento, engagement in the rehabilitation of Marawi City, accreditation of its college, junior high, and grade school programs, and numerous infrastructure and campus developments. He has a PhD in economics from the University College London, a master in public policy from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, MA in theology and bachelor in sacred theology, summa cum laude from the Loyola School of Theology, MA in economics from the New School for Social Research, and an AB in economics honors program cum laude from Ateneo de Manila University. At present, he is also a member of the Board of Trustees of Ateneo de Davao University, Ateneo de Manila University, and Ateneo de Zamboanga University. Dearest colleagues, let us give a round of applause to Father Roberto C. Yap of the Society of Jesus for his opening message.
Good morning. On behalf of the Ateneo de Manila University, I would like to welcome you all to the Ateneo de Manila for this morning's annual symposium of the Philippine Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Study Network, or PASCN, entitled Empower, Include, Grow, Unlocking Inclusive Growth in the Philippines and the Asia Pacific Region. We at the Ateneo are very pleased to host this symposium this morning and later this afternoon, the General Assembly of the network. This morning, we are honored to welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr., lead convener of the Philippines APEC Study Center Network and president of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, Mr. Marcos A.S. Punsalang, Assistant Secretary and Director General of the APEC National Secretariat, Department of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Jocelyn Celero, Associate Professor of the Asian Center of the University of the Philippines. We thank the representatives of various APEC member universities who are here this morning. And I would like to welcome my colleagues also at the Ateneo de Manila, Dr. Charina Saloma Peduno, the Dean of the School of Social Sciences, Dr. Randy Tuanyo, the Dean of the Ateneo School of Government, and Dr. Sir Percival Reyes, Officer in charge of the Department of Economics. A warm welcome also to all our attendees, both here at Escaler Hall and those joining us via live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom. Throughout history, innovation has been the driving force behind economic progress. From the Industrial Revolution to the digital age, emergent technologies have given rise to new opportunities and propelled societies forward. The transformative journey has led to innovative business models, groundbreaking products and services, and revolutionized how businesses are conducted. The Philippines stands at the forefront of Southeast Asia's rapidly expanding digital economy, driven by the emergence of cutting-edge information and communications technologies, and further accelerated by the unprecedented impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our nation has undergone a profound digital transformation. This transformation offers immense potential for significant economic growth and paves the way for inclusive and sustainable development. However, the extent to which we can harness these opportunities depends on our ability to bridge the digital divide and address critical policy issues. This symposium, co-hosted by the Ateneo de Manila and the PASCN, aims to explore innovative and sustainable solutions to some of society's most pressing challenges through the lens of digital technology and inclusive growth. The Philippine APEC Study Network plays a crucial role in this endeavor. By fostering coordination among different universities, the network can significantly impact addressing the issues faced by countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Increased collaboration among academic partners in the region is vital. As the president of the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities in the Asia-Pacific region, I believe that strengthening these economic ties and academic ties is essential to effectively tackle the diverse economic issues we face. We aim to contribute to this goal as part of Ateneo's commitment to excellence by striving to build a top-tier digital university by advancing teaching, learning, and formation and research, fostering cutting-edge research and creative work, cultivating an inclusive, diverse, and sustainable institution and community, and engaging expansively and immersively with society. Our departments and centers aim to contribute to the debate and dialogue on the different economic, social, and political issues being faced in the Asia-Pacific region. We also aim to strengthen our contribution to developing cutting-edge technologies that aim to strengthen sustainability and digitalization in our part of the globe. This morning, we have the privilege of engaging with leading experts, scholars, and researchers who will share valuable insights on how to harness the power of technology as an engine of economic growth that is inclusive, equitable, and environmentally sustainable. I extend my heartfelt welcome to all our distinguished guests, speakers, delegates, and partners. On behalf of the Ateneo de Manila University, I express my deepest gratitude to the PASCN for the opportunity to host this symposium and General Assembly. May the event inspire us to embrace the transformative potential of the digital age and propel us towards a future of shared prosperity and opportunity for all. Maraming salamat at magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Father Bobby. We are about to hear the keynote talk of this symposium. As mentioned earlier, the transformative journey that we have experienced in recent years has led to the rise to innovative business models, groundbreaking products and services, and revolutionized how businesses are conducted. But fully realizing the immense potential of these developments hinges on the country's ability to bridge the digital divide and address critical policy issues, such as promoting opportunities and addressing risk. Policies and collective action, including by women business organizations, have key roles on this, including to ensure vulnerable workers are not further disadvantaged, protections are not undermined, workers' registrations adequately reflect employment status, and necessary regulatory reforms are put in place. To provide us further context on the best course of action to address the gap is the Director General of the Philippine APEC National Secretariat, who is also the Chief of Mission 2 at the Department of Foreign Affairs. He is currently assigned at the Office of the Undersecretary of Multilateral Affairs and International Economic Relations. He previously served, well, I have practiced for this, Charge d'Affaires of the Philippine Embassy in Santiago, Lima, Minister and Consul General of the Philippine Embassy in Wellington, New Zealand, Consul at the Philippine Consulate General in Saipan, and then Second Secretary and Consul at the Philippine Embassy in Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea. His assignments at the DFA included stints as Director of the Office of ASEAN Affairs and Executive Director of the Office of Consular Affairs. Once again, to give his keynote talk, let us welcome Director General Marcos Angelo A.S. Punsalang. A round of applause.
Dr. Aniceto, Orbeta Jr., President of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies and lead convener the Philippine APEC Study Center Network, respectively. Father Roberto Chan, Society of Jesus. President of the Ateneo de Manila University. Dr. Philip Arnold Tuanyo, Dean of the Ateneo School of Government. Dr. Marife Ballesteros, Chief Officer in Charge. Honored guests, distinguished colleagues in government, esteemed members of the academic community, friends, ladies, and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to be with you today on behalf of the APEC National Secretariat, which I supervise under the policy of the DFA Undersecretary for Multilateral Affairs and International Economic Relations. We felt quite encouraged to be on board this initiative, which we find truly commendable, particularly as it provides an extraordinary opportunity to freely share information and openly exchange our views on the APEC agenda and Philippine priorities in this important forum. We believe that it is only through honest discourse that we can achieve the required level of understanding and accord in order to get our act together as a nation, build effective partnership across sectors, and successfully unify our efforts towards the attainment of the same goal. As one, our aspirations for the country may indeed be within reach. Likewise, we had no reservations about accepting this invitation, given that this engagement is with the academic community, which has always enriched policymaking. We know and acknowledge that as thought leaders, you bring with you diverse perspectives and incisive commentary born out of rigorous analysis and scholarly work. Of course, as educators, you have the considerable power in shaping the minds of students who will be our future leaders. However, more importantly, although less recognized, is your role as bridge between government and the public and as a voice for the vulnerable and marginalized. Therefore, we genuinely look forward to today's proceedings and keenly await its results, which we hope you can share with the APEC National Secretariat. We will regard them as valuable input, not only to our work in the DFA, but also to those of our partner agencies in the Technical Board on APEC Matters, or TBAC. In the meantime, allow me to talk about APEC and how the Philippines, through its very active and consistent involvement in this forum, is able to squarely face manifold global economic challenges and continually expand its role as an increasingly important player in the international arena. Probably most of you will remember that it all began in 1989, against the backdrop of a sea of change that saw the fall of the Berlin Wall and the failure in the GATT negotiation. That led to the creation of a government-level informal group of 12 economies, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC. APEC was envisioned not only to uphold the rules-based multilateral trading system, but also to work towards the fruition of what was then predicted to be the Pacific century. Today, from the original group of 12 members, APEC has expanded to 21 economies that are responsible for approximately 62% of the world's GDP and 48% of world trade in 2021. It is home to around 2.95 billion people. As a founding member of APEC, this forum is without a doubt a cornerstone of the global multilateral economic cooperation engagements of the Philippines. Through its membership, the Philippines benefited from the effects of APEC's trade and investment facilitation initiatives, capacity building projects, information sharing on best practices, and reduced cost of doing business, among many others. Moreover, APEC economies account for a vast majority of foreign direct investment into the Philippines. amounting to 8.9 billion US dollars in 2023, primarily in manufacturing, which bodes well for Philippine industrial development. APEC economies were also the leading export market for the Philippines, amounting to 84.5% of total Philippine exports, or 66.71 billion US dollars in 2022. In addition, the region is a significant source of foreign tourists for the Philippines, comprising about 57% of all visitors' arrivals in 2022. I think the previous figure should be in peso. This year, the host economy, Peru, chose the theme Empower, Include, Grow. This carries on the theme of the Philippines 2015 APEC hosting, Building Inclusive Economies, Building a Better World. Prior to this, APEC's focus was principally on trade-driven growth. The Philippines, through emphasizing inclusive growth, expanded that focus by bringing to the fore sectors that are less integrated into the bustling APEC economy, such as MSMEs, women in the economy, the services sector, and those who have experienced the benefit of the burgeoning digital economy. While APEC economies have made enormous strides since its founding, there remains a lot to be done. In a speech before the APEC CEO Summit in November of 2023, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. identified challenges in food, energy security, digital and green transformation, and climate change action. The President challenged economic and business leaders to address the crack and lack in policies and systems to ensure that no one is left behind in APEC's pursuit of economic and financial goals. The Philippines' participation in APEC is consonant with the President's socio-economic agenda. At the APEC ministers responsible for trade meeting, held as an important highlight of the second APEC senior officials meeting and related meetings in Arequipa, Peru on May 14-18 this year, which I attended. The focus was on charting a course towards deeper economic and technical cooperation to boost prosperity and well-being across the Asia-Pacific region. The meeting also explored the free trade area of the Asia-Pacific, a concept pushed by the Business Advisory Council as APEC's business arm. The meeting concluded with a statement reaffirming APEC's commitment to promoting inclusive and interconnected trade and investment across the Asia-Pacific. The Philippines, represented by DTI, called for stronger collaboration among APEC economies to address current challenges and revitalize the multilateral trading system. Among others, we urge them to engage constructively to resolve domestic support and public stockholding issues, and suggested that member economies explore alternative approaches for further discussion in recognition that this is a new subject. We also champion the integration of broader segments of the population in overall trade, advocating for greater inclusion of MSMEs, women, persons with disabilities, youth, and elderly. You will note that since the Philippines hosting of APEC in 2015, the country has consistently campaigned for economic opportunities and participation of underserved and underrepresented groups. All of these build on the APEC's Putrajaya Vision 2040, which seeks to keep an open, dynamic, resilient, and peaceful Asia-Pacific community by 2040, for the prosperity of all our people and future generations. Most likely, you will similarly recall that APEC determined that the achievement of this vision shall be pursued through three economic drivers: trade and investment, innovation and digitalization, and strong, balanced, secure, sustainable, and inclusive growth. Of the three economic drivers, the newest is innovation and digitalization. APEC leaders formally recognize the role of the internet economy, in promoting innovative development and increasing economic participation in 2014 during the China host. APEC's work on this economic driver is largely led by the Digital Economy Steering Group, guided by the APEC Internet and Digital Economic Roadmap, or IDER. The DESG pursues work towards the achievement of universal broadband access, inclusion, interoperability, regulatory cohesion, and facilitation of e-commerce and advancing cooperation on digital trade. This year, Peru will continue to pursue innovation and digitalization to promote the transition to the formal and global economy. The APEC National Secretariat will support the host government's efforts, recognizing that in the Philippines, the Philippine economy contributed to 9.4% to GDP in 2022, an increase of 11% from the previous year. The sector employed about 6 million people in 2022, or 13% of the total employment. As of the end of 2022, digital payments amounted for 42.1%, the total volume of payment. Innovation and digitalization is but one of 3 thematic pillars of APEC's Peru hosting, but it is the most relevant to the discussion today. In the invitation and program that was disseminated to us, we are being tasked to consider the most pressing challenges facing the Philippines pertaining to inclusion in the global economy, as well as developments in innovation and digitalization in the Asia-Pacific region. I am certain that today's symposium will produce very valuable knowledge and insights that would inform and guide policies towards the attainment of our country's priorities, particularly with the distinguished panelists who will be leading our discussion. Allow me again to applaud your efforts in advance, especially in identifying and defining the challenges that beset the Philippines and charting a path toward the realization of our President's vision articulated in his 8-point socio-economic agenda. May we all contribute to advancing inclusive growth and witness the empowerment and prosperity, the least in our society. I wish you all an enjoyable, productive, and meaningful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General Punsalang. At this point, we will expand further this academic conversation into 2 panel discussions. The first installment is a panel session to be facilitated by the Ateneo de Manila University on innovative and sustainable solutions to society's most pressing challenges. This session will be moderated, teacher ko to, by Dr. Sir Percival K. Peña-Reyes, who has been teaching economics at the Ateneo de Manila University since 2015. Allow me to read further his bio note. Fresh out of college in 2004, he began to work as a research assistant at the Ateneo Center for Economic Research and Development. After his stint with ASEC, he joined the Bank of the Philippine Islands Officership Training Program. Upon his graduation from the OTP, he was promoted to a branch officer position. After his stint with BPI, he worked as a financial analyst at the Deutsche Knowledge Services. Transitioning from the banking sector into the development sector, he then worked as an economic analyst at the Asian Development Bank, then as a research programs manager at the Makati Business Club, and then an economist at the Asian Institute of Management Policy Center. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to the ADMO panel moderator, Dr. Sir Percival K. Peña-Reyes. Dr. Sir, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Louis, for that glowing introduction. So I would like to, of course, welcome everyone to this momentous occasion and for our panel entitled Innovative and Sustainable Solutions to Society's Most Pressing Challenges. I'd like to give a brief introduction to this, and then I'll move ahead to introduce our esteemed speakers for this morning. All right. So the Asia Pacific region stands at the forefront of global economic growth, yet it faces significant challenges in achieving sustainable development and leveraging digitalization. In this context, the Philippine Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Network, together with the Ateneo de Manila University, is convening right now a panel discussion to explore these critical issues. So the panel, themed Sustainability and Digitalization Initiatives in the Asia Pacific region with a focus on the Philippines, aims to address the current state of sustainability and digitalization, their impacts on inclusion and growth, and the policies necessary to support these twin objectives. This discussion will feature prominent speakers, including our very own Dr. Emma Porio, project leader of the Coastal Cities at Risk project here at the Ateneo de Manila University, will provide insights into the sustainability challenges and climate change impacts affecting the region. Additionally, we have Mr. Gerald Pascua, my esteemed colleague in the Department of Economics, who will discuss the role of digitalization and digital trade integration in fostering economic growth and inclusion. So this panel will delve into the intersection of these themes, examining how digital technologies can enhance sustainable practices and how sustainable development can drive inclusive economic growth. By bringing together experts in sustainability and digitalization, the Ateneo panel aims to highlight the interconnectedness of these issues and propose actionable policies for the Asia Pacific region, particularly for the Philippines. The discussion will focus on describing the current landscape, analyzing the implications for inclusion and growth, and recommending comprehensive strategies that align with the broader goals of the APEC network. This initiative underscores the importance of collaborative efforts in addressing the complex challenges of sustainability and digitalization to ensure a resilient and inclusive future for the region. So now I would like to introduce our speakers. The first speaker is Dr. Emma Porio. Dr. Emma Porio is professor at the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, School of Social Sciences, here in Ateneo de Manila University, and Science Research Fellow of the Manila Observatory. She is the immediate past president of the International Sociological Association, Clinical Public Sociology Division, and of the Asia Pacific Sociological Association. Professor Porio is review editor, Journal of Frontiers in Sustainable Cities Frontier in London, principal editorial advisor of the Environment and Urbanization Asia edition, and review editor of the Journal of the Cities of the Global South. From 2021 to 2023, AD Scientific Index listed her as one of the most highly cited social scientists in the Philippines and the ASEAN region. In July, she was conferred the highest faculty rank, Professor Emeritus, while in October 25 last year, she was awarded the Manuel L. Quezon Dangal Award, which is the highest form of recognition given by the Quezon City government to outstanding individuals and institutions with remarkable contributions and achievements that bring honor not only to themselves but also the city and the country. Right? Our second speaker is Professor Gerald Gracius Y. Pascua. Mr. Pascua is a lecturer at the Ateneo de Manila Department of Economics. He also carried out research and consultancy work for various institutions such as the Department of Trade and Industry in the Philippines, the Asian Development Bank, Asian Development Bank Institute, ASEAN Secretariat, and the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, among others. His current research interests include empirical analysis of regional and new generation trade agreements, frontier issues in trade policy, including digital trade and green transition revisions, and the dynamics of regional economic integration in developing Asia, focusing on the ASEAN Economic Community. He holds an MA in Economics from the University of the Philippines School of Economics. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to call to the panel our esteemed speakers.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this very important forum, talking about challenges that our country is facing and what doable, actionable solutions that we need to bring. Presentation today that I'm going to do based on the findings and engagements of the coastal city investing in climate and disaster resilience. The project I would like to thank the PASCN and Babes Orbeta for inviting me and for Randy Tonyo. Babes, I cannot forget because his daughter was my student eons ago. So you know you've grown older when you meet your students who are still working there. And I think I always tell people, I'm so happy I'm old because you can look and say, these are the problems we're facing now, and we should work together, young, old, middle age, to this problem they're facing. So, the title of my presentation is Philippine Cities and Communities Aspiring to be Resilient, Inclusive, and Sustainable amidst climate and disaster resilience. The anthropologist Arjuna Padurai said that what saves us as human beings is the capacity to aspire, the capacity to dream, and to think as capacity to dream for a better future, and importantly, focus on what we can do the present. I'd like to thank Father Bobby for the support of this project. In this presentation, I would like to argue that climate disasters have intensified globally and nationally, resulting in damages and losses in property, life, infrastructure, agriculture, and ecosystems health, and increasing the number of people looking for jobs, livelihoods, and food security. Part one of my presentation will look at the climate impact drivers like floods, typhoons, storms, sea level rise, earthquakes that intensify the vulnerability and exposure of our people to climate and disasters. Part two, I'd like to talk about transdisciplinary innovations in climate and disaster resilience through collaborative public-private people partnership. Or fourth, part three, and I'd like to end by looking at the synthesis of what we're doing, and I'm arguing for a science-based, problem-focused, solutions-driven climate actions with the systems led. I would like to argue that we need to preach science policy practice nexus for climate and disaster resilience. The twin crises of our time, climate and social inequality, has intensified with effects of pandemic and the political and economic resource conflicts. The IPCC report of 2022 for Sao policy makers basically said that climate change has increased poverty, in widening inequality, and creating new vulnerability, especially for people who are vulnerable and exposed to climate risk. The Philippines is always known to top the statistics that did not want to No? So we're number one, and we're number one in the World Risk Index. In 2019, we're number 9. But because of the series of climate disasters, 2021, 22, and 19, we're now also against number 1. Extreme weather events, the climate and the social inequality crisis drives human mobility, political economic plans, but also it provides us possibilities for recovery and resilience. 90% of the regional greenhouse gas emissions in Southeast Asia come from 5 countries: Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Climate impact drivers. I want to specify this because when I work with local governments, when we have flooding disaster, we have this. I always say that climate impact drivers, floods, typhoons, sea level rise, subsidence, earthquakes, they drive the impact of these hazards to displacement, poverty, and social inequality for political economic resource conflicts. Either displacement in Marawi, the post-Yolanda, in Lake. You can see here the post-disaster situations in urban rural Mindanao. For those of my gender-sensitive colleagues, look at the left-hand side. There's the father there is taking care of the baby. The son is cooking. So I was thinking, where is the mother? Perhaps she's washing the clothes there in the river or by the artisan public. You can see here on the right, the evacuation centers that always prop up Dr. Gansing. I'd like you to look at this figure and why I argue that we should invest in prevention, mitigation, and transformative adaptation. You will see in column number 1 that Philippines is number 3 and the most highly exposed country to climate disaster. Japan is number 4. But in the second column, in the most vulnerable countries, the top 15, Philippines or Japan is not there. But when you go to the third of the most 15 at-risk countries, Philippines is still there in number 3. Japan is not anywhere anymore. It's now 70. So what makes the difference? For me, it's the investment, as the risk, investment in preventive, mitigative. You invest, you don't just respond. You just don't react with plastic bags of ayuda after every typhoon. I always say, we're like Sisyphus, or maybe Nero, playing the flute while Rome is burning. Every typhoon, rock goes down, then you go again and you push the rock up. So I like this, that's mainly my argument that I say, number 1, basically, I'd say that disasters have doubled the past decades, and so are the damages and losses, and heightening the intersectionality of vulnerabilities in our economy, environment, and the social ecological system. But our ways of analyzing the climate and disaster impacts are still very disciplinary. But meanwhile, climate actions at the national and local level are very sectorally driven. So in SICAR PH, we propose 3 things. 1, we need to naturalize the social sciences, socialize the humanities, and humanize the natural ecosystems. And we need to be problem-focused, solutions-driven with the systems lens. I don't have much time, so I'll basically say, so development increases climate disaster. That I said already. This is, you can see, I always say we have to plan based on future scenarios, not on past things. You can see that Philippines is sinking 3 times since sea level rise than the global average. You will see the coastal inundation map of Metro Manila by 2050, and there in the by so sea level rise is a big thing. So For me, central to bridging science policy practices are the three principles of transfer action research. Co-production of knowledge with stakeholders. Two, you co-create capacities of scientists, professionals, and practitioners, leading to co-ownership, co-benefit, and co-stewardship. Yes, I know I don't have much time, but I really believe that to understand Philippine climate change vulnerability, we have to do an intersectional analysis of vulnerability, adaptation, and resilience. What are the 6 conditions of systems change? 1, you should have the policies, the practices, and the resource flows anchored on power dynamics and the embedded mental sets of the actors. In CRPH, we really believe our strategy is to achieving transformative adaptation is to do the nexus of vertical, horizontal, and intersectional strategies in institutionalizing the resilience agenda at the local level with universities, LGUs, resilience councils, at the national level, with the National Resilience Council, of Civil Defense, Climate Change, DILG, and then also at the regional level, and local levels at UNDRR, and the right. The SICAR page is Consortium of Resilient Cities. You can do that. And in SICAR, we distinguish into 2 kinds of innovation. Incremental innovation that doesn't change the systems, and then transformative, contextually driven innovations for time. You don't have much time, you have access this all my presentations and all you can download in our website. You can see that we have 3 websites. So transformative adaptations, and then we insert them in the local development planning. But it's very clear that we as social scientists, physical scientists, we produce socially inclusive, gender-sensitive planning that is fit into the local planning. This is our model for public-private partnership, where basically we bridge scientific knowledge and community practice and resiliency between research and science and rural community. The LGU, the PICAR-based supplies the science to the National Resilience Council and their Adapt a City program. This is the Resilient program in partner cities where we give climate and disaster risk assessments, resilience workshops. This is also here. And basically, this is our last. We are out of the Ateneo Innovation Center with Roberto and Ateneo Innovation Center and the school. We propose the Climate Resilience Hub. We basically believe my lesson after that, Cebu City is very rich, Cebu province very rich, but after 3 days, there are 3 long lines: food, water, and electricity, and then communication. So we basically created with Ateneo Innovation Center, Observatory, and the scientists here in Ateneo de Manila, what we call the resilience, anchored the fuse next: food, energy, water, security, plug. You need the communication. So we think that, we should have community resilience learning hub, and we have the cultural resilience hub where it is called the tools of the communications, the food, energy, and water. And we're working this now with local government unit. So it's really that, you have a state emergency center system, which basically becomes the center when there's a typhoon or flooding. People can go there, but you have all the elements that you need. So this is Fuse Nexus in action, and of course, Barangay Nagas. You have the aquaponics, you have the solar powered potable water systems. So this is my last slide right here. My key messages to scientists, policymakers, leaders, and civil society, private sector participants. We are at the crossroads of our life in this planet. There's our urgent need. Need 1, we have to anticipate, and we have to be anticipatory in our climate action. before put the science and technology into prepare, adapt, and transform. But it seems to me, right now the practice is also just respond. Number two, we have to collaborate and navigate the system. When we innovate, we have to collaborate. The system that we are in, and we are able to bridge the scientific knowledge creation and mobilization for climate action and stakeholders. Number three, we need a strong commitment to invest in a risk-informed, resilience-driven planning and development industry. And number four, we have to create a supportive conditions for transformative climate action. So convergent policy practices, resource flows, integrate and harmonize the powers in terms of our desire to have a better places, the connections and connectedness, to a common vision of a better place, a better society, a better culture, and a better thing. So thank you very much. I think I like and this is my favorite African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'd like to thank the Coastal City Service Project, and Randy is our father first. And then I welcome you to download anything in our website. Just acknowledge where it comes. Thank you.
So while the Secretariat is preparing the slides, good day everyone once again. It's a great pleasure to join the rest of the panelists today and talk about the landscape of cross-border data flows and regulations in the region, as well as the crucial role of regional and international cooperation in addressing digital risks and challenges. Unlike Dr. Emma Porio's slides, my slides don't have much images. They're full of graphs. So please bear with me, and I hope I don't implicate the entire colleagues I have with the economics department. So for the next 10 minutes, allow me to begin with So as mentioned in the keynote speeches and the introductory remarks of our distinguished guests, the trend towards a more digital economy has well started before the COVID-19 pandemic. A clear decoupling can be observed around 2010. If you look at the left panel, by 2020, some estimates by the OECD presents that 25% of the global trade is digital. On the right-hand panel, we have a particular analysis on services trade. And we find that information and communication technology registered the fastest growth. If you look at the year averages from 2005 to 2020, average growth rates for both exports and imports in digitally deliverable services surpass the rates of non-digitally deliverable services. Asia and the Pacific is at the forefront of this trend, as mentioned also during the keynote speeches. For both imports and exports of digitally deliverable services, Asia and the Pacific grew at an average of more than 10%, and 8% respectively, against 6.9% and 6.7% for the rest of the world. Next slide. Thus, digital trade is rapidly growing in importance, and this is largely dependent on infrastructure and cross-border data flows. It's therefore important that regulatory measures that constrain or restrict information should be mitigated because it will have a trade-reducing effect. For example, data localization policies, local storage requirements, and conditional flow regimes, which we can talk about later further during the Q&A portion, can inhibit the free flow of data across borders and hamper digital trade. Restricting the movement of data impedes the ability of firms to source and send data when it is valued at best used, hindering their chances of exploiting comparative advantage. As seen on the right panel, if I may simplify the analysis over there, it's just saying that Asian economies are more negatively impacted than the rest of the world with the presence of these kinds of data-related restrictions. Next slide, please. In response to these rapid digital trends, and as economies become more connected by data flows, governments, of course, have been adopting regulations which can either condition the movement of data across borders or which mandate the data can be stored domestically, as seen on the left panel, with the increasing trend for restrictive measures for data regulations. Okay. On the right-hand side, an OECD report on digital services trade, again, something particular on digital services, have increased as much as 25% in 2022 compared to 2014 levels, indicating more restrictive digital services regimes. As seen on the right panel as well, the Asia-Pacific trend is high on the average and has been increasing in recent years. Next slide, please. Furthermore, as highlighted by the OECD's Digital Services Trade Restrictiveness Index on the left panel, the Philippines is somewhere there on the right part, meaning we have relatively less restrictive compared to other economies. But what we wish to highlight on the left panel is the heterogeneity. Okay. The patterns, or at least the values of digital trade restrictiveness, vary largely across economies, and most of these are in Asia and the Pacific region as well. And the kinds of restrictiveness also vary per country, most of which are limited by infrastructure constraints. Furthermore, on the right panel, we also observe heterogeneity in digital regulatory frameworks, meaning if one economy in a trading pair has strong rules about data privacy, for example, while the other partner is not, it may be difficult or impossible or challenging to move data in that direction, therefore also inhibiting digital trade. So we are looking at both disparities and heterogeneities in digital regimes within and across economies. Next slide, please. Amidst the increasing restrictiveness, okay, an ADB research, where I'm also a consultant by Fracane and Dermaral in 2021, found that Asia and the Pacific restrictiveness is more severe compared to the rest of the world as a whole. Though this is in part because of the People's Republic of China's larger economic weight in Asia. Okay. On the right panel, disaggregating by regulatory measures, Asia's share in local storage requirements is quite less, the column in the middle, while its share on conditional flow regimes remains modest. On the other hand, proportion of data localization measures for Asia and the Pacific comprise around 70% of the entire regulatory restrictiveness for the world. So we are more towards data localization restriction. Next slide, please. Given these challenges, and amidst the increasing restrictiveness in digital regulations, international cooperation on digital trade is also growing. As you can see from the increasing trend for on the left panel, the green line over there. So there's a growing number of RTAs. RTA stands for Regional Trade Agreements with digital trade provisions. Of course, some of them are limiting, but some of them are also facilitating. On the right panel, we see that the governance of trade-related issues, including cross-border data flows, have also migrated to bilateral and regional trade agreements. This is computed from the TAPED dataset. It's a trade agreements provisions on electronic commerce and data database. There were 116 agreements on digital trade or e-commerce as of June 2022 in that database, and it comprises 33% of all existing agreements. Overall, since 2001, 44% or close to half of all agreements already contain a digital trade or an e-commerce provision, so signifying an increasing interest towards negotiating digital trade-related provisions in FTAs and free trade agreements. Next slide, please. If we're going to zoom in on one particular regional trade agreement, allow me to point out RCEP. RCEP is, of course, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. I highlight this because it's currently the largest free trade agreement in the world by share of GDP, share of population, and the Philippines, together with the rest of ASEAN and 5 of its dialogue partners, are part of this agreement. In terms of RCEP's scope for digital trade liberalization, the agreement has provisions on e-commerce and intellectual property, which are relevant for digital trade. However, we focus on digital services. Okay, the agreement has no dedicated chapter on digital services, and its provisions are subsumed under the trade and services chapters. As seen on the right panel, and this is from a data set prepared by AREA and the ADB, and we computed actually the liberalization rates across 4 modes. And if we're just going to highlight mode 1, which is a proxy for measuring digital services trade, we see that the mode for digital services trade is one of the highest liberalization rates on the average, 46.1. However, again, I point out that disparities in the depth of commitments across its members also vary, and this can skew the potential gains unevenly. Next slide, please. In fact, we contend that if we graph that services trade restrictiveness and the liberalization rates across economies, we think that the liberalization rates reflect the stringency of domestic regulations, meaning whether or not we commit in our international trade agreements liberally or not is also dictated upon our own domestic restrictions or domestic limitations. For example, there may be little room for further liberalization unless domestic regulatory reforms are implemented at the national level. Next slide, please. In addition to regional trade agreements, there are also digital economy agreements that are in the forefront of efforts to establish data trade rules for free flow of data across borders, including data security, protection, privacy, and the others. Allow me to highlight some of these digital economic agreements from Singapore and the United Kingdom, entering the force 2022, Singapore, Australia, 2020, and Singapore, New Zealand, Chile, Digital Economy Partnership Agreement, all of which are APEC economies, entered in 2020. We can talk about that later during the Q&A. Next slide, please. There are also some of other international cooperation initiatives. Allow me to highlight one, the APEC, Cross-Border Privacy Rule System. Okay, it's a voluntary accountability-based system that facilitates privacy-respecting data flows among APEC economies. So apart from FTAs, there are also different efforts from international initiatives and regional cooperation initiatives that govern data and digital trade. Next slide, please. Finally, in ASEAN, I may also point out, okay, so we have the ASEAN Framework on Digital Data Governance. Stems from, or it is abided by the Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity 2025, and part of its strategic priorities is the facilitation of cross-border data flows. Again, we can discuss this further during the Q&A. Next slide, please. That being said, as different governance approaches to cross-border data flows coexist, the significant information gap and the growing divergence in regulatory frameworks remain significant obstacles to digital trade. Facilitating cross-border data flow should be integrated to a greater, more holistic approach to digital economy participation and cooperation. Furthermore, it should be complemented by implementing domestic reforms geared towards bridging, as our keynote speakers has mentioned, the digital divide. Example of which would be, number one, the lack of skills and affordability of technology, digital technologies. The access to digital economy and the internet also remains a challenge, particularly in the region. And countries, therefore, should invest further in ICT infrastructure, enhancing digital skills competency, and intensifying digital regulatory cooperation to better facilitate and increase cross-border trade. Finally, refocusing technical support in aid for trade, of which only 0.4% is currently going to digital services, will also help equip developing economies, particularly those in Asia and the Pacific region, to participate more actively in digital trade initiatives and more fully realize the potential of digital trade for inclusive and sustainable growth. I think that's my last slide. Check. Yes. So I think I made it on 10 minutes. So we can further discuss the concerns later during the Q&A. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po.
All right. Thank you, Gerald, for your presentation. Ma'am Emma already left, so we're the ones left here on this panel. Okay. Okay. Great. So thank you everyone for your attention. And now we would like to solicit questions, no? So that we will be able to thresh out more insights from our speaker regarding his presentation. So I see many familiar faces here, no? My students. I wonder why you're here. Okay, maybe we can get questions from our audience. And I understand we also have an online audience as well. We will be getting questions from them too. All right. Anyone would like? Yes, please. Very good.
Hello. So I'm Elio Berrin from 3AB Political Science. I just wanted to ask two quick questions. The first one is just revolving around what free data flows looks like. So what is the nature of the data that is usually communicated between different countries? And also, like in general, what's the type of data that's being restricted within the Asia Pacific region? My second question has to do with the motives behind this. So much of this presentation revolves around Asia in particular having very restrictive policies around the free flow of data. What I wanted to ask is why is this the case? And why do Asian countries regulate data in this specific way?
And where there's that's why there are process the same kinds of skills. Providing provide more information to state and stipulate policies that are related to the example data organization, where data analysis are the policies that are considered for data and people and its forces of this process of uploading required to be user and government contribution requirements. So rather than the governments are very new, start the data, start the departments to be one thing. Moving it up. But when we start building data and the bank spreading abroad, in that second we use this and they do it, they raise the country, they don't already have the space. Possibly here,
All right, thank you very much. Do we have others? Those who are asking questions, so please state your name, and if you're a student of your year-end course, or for those who are not students, your name and institutional affiliation. Or maybe I can ask a question, Gerald, since I recall having written something about the digital economy before, a few years back. In your research, how, I don't know if you've come across this, but how important is it to secure the digital economy? Because right now we know that a lot of trade is being facilitated uh, through digital means, but along with the benefits, there are risks. Obviously, no? You have scammers, you have all of these illegal activities, no, also happening digitally. Have you come across anything research-wise that would speak about the importance also of making sure that these economic transactions remain safe? Right. Great. Thank you for that. Perhaps you can entertain questions from our Zoom audience. There are questions that we can read out. Thank you very much. All right. So, on digital trade, may we have the panel's opinion on what measures can economies adapt to navigate through the need to balance more homogeneity and less restrictive regulatory measures, and the concern for strengthened security of digital systems, for instance, against IPR concerns.
What measures can economies adopt to navigate the need to balance more homogeneity? So part of the negotiations to ensure that it will be more seamless across borders when two countries exchange data is to attain convergence in their digital policies. So, and that's why some of those digital economy agreements and digital economy partnership agreements select those key pillars. Of course, it's a progressive process, especially if the countries don't have enough regulatory measures or they don't have the regulatory capacity to handle these kinds of issues. But at least we see in Asian Pacific region, we see pockets of these initiatives through digital economy agreements and digital economy partnership agreements. They select, for example, cybersecurity, fintech, regtech, these kinds of provisions or issues. And once they agree on a common tenet of rules, then that will create for a more seamless exchange of data and information between those two economies. So that's how they can, that's one way, that's one channel through which they can aspire more homogeneity. Of course, there are also multilateral efforts from the WTO, the Joint Statement Initiatives also, or trade on international technology goods and services. We can read further on those things. So there are these initiatives that's happening at the bilateral, at the regional, at the multilateral level. As mentioned earlier, the APEC initiative on data privacy, something that I forgot to mention in Sir Dr. Peña-Reyes' question earlier. So data privacy is also one concern. It's not only a concern for businesses, but also, of course, for consumers. And that's why we're all stakeholders when we discuss these kinds of digital trade issues.
Okay, thank you, Gerald. I'm looking at the time. Would we still have room? Okay, perhaps one more question. Yes, please. Sir Francis would like to ask a question.
Good morning. Francis Marquimba, Project Director of the Philippine APEC Study Center Network. I'm asking this question in behalf of the students in the room. So for economics majors or for students, why should we care about data, the regulations on data, and why should we care about the Philippines participating on digital trade?
Okay. I think we can more easily appreciate the answer to the second question on why should the Philippines have a stake on digital trade, because a lot of us are already involved in digital markets. Southeast Asia, particularly Philippines and Indonesia, are one of the biggest markets for digital economy, digital market. Whenever you do Shopee, Lazada, whenever you do your social media accounts, for example, Facebook, X, Twitter. So those are already part and gambit of digital services one way or another. And since we are a very savvy country involved in these kinds of market transactions, it is to our stake to actually be aware of these digital trade issues, because the trajectory is, if we look at the trends, it can only go more digital from here henceforth. So as grounded by the speeches earlier and as the numbers support, the pandemic hastened it, but it's already a trajectory ever since before decades. And with the increasing technological investment and catch up among other economies, the economy will become more and more digitally enabled. And we expect that to intensify in the next few years. And therefore, we would more greatly see an increased necessity towards regulatory harmonization and convergence on digital trade rules and regulations. So I hope it answers the question, sir. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
All right. Okay, so I've been told we have room for two more questions. So hang in there, my friend. Okay, so can Mr. Pascua further explain why Asia seems to be incurring negative externalities from increasing digitalization? Would you have any insight on this? Negative externalities from increasing digitalization. You know, the wheat and the weeds. Just as there are good things, there are bad things that come with it. So
well, rather than pointing at as negative externalities, the challenges. Because, for example, Asia and the Pacific, as what we can observe across the different economies that comprises it, they are of different and various levels of development. And that's why whenever we pursue these kinds of liberalization initiatives, some economies would have it harder to comply with those provisions. And the difficulty in complying will set some laggards with the trend. And therefore, that can widen the digital divide. And that's why initiatives such as this, discussing these issues, and then different economies finding a common ground on how to move further together would help, okay, narrow that gap. Of course, some economies will be more competent in committing with these commitments, in complying with these commitments. Some economies, for example, the least developed economies, would have more need for investments in digital infrastructure, capacity building, and digital regulation competencies. And that's where the greater multilateral cooperation and regional integration cooperation comes into play. Aid for trade, for example, and technical support can have a potential role to bridge that investment gaps and therefore narrow the development gaps. So, at least that's how I see it. Maybe the next panel later this afternoon can provide further discussion.
Okay, don't be shy, ladies and gentlemen. We have, yes, no, we can have one more on-site audience question. Yes, ma'am, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm Mela Mantaring, former staff of PASCN. So before we go to the regional level or the cooperation among economies, sa APEC kasi it's economies. When you're in ASEAN, it's a member state. My question is at domestic level in the Philippines. So what are the current initiatives of the ICT towards this digital infrastructure? Before, di ba yung mga MRT, merong mga, ano pa tawag doon? So I'd like to know kung meron bang mga updates here in the Philippines or maybe at the House of Prep, yung mga bills on how we can further develop our digital infrastructure. Kasi di ba before we go to the regional, dapat meron ding development at the local level. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's also a good question, ma'am. It's worthy of research. Well, I think it's a good exercise to have a stock take on what kinds of initiatives align to these kinds of goals. So currently, I don't have the information. Maybe our colleagues from the government would have a more fuller answer on this. But yes, we look forward to have a stock take of this initiative so that we can see how we progress.
Okay, yes, sir. One more, yes.
Good morning. I'm Julius Walampagos, Chair of the Department of Economics, University of San Carlos in Cebu. So my question is, in one of your slides, you've listed some of the concerns regarding data trade flows. And I think the first two reasons, if I remember correctly, the first two reasons were consumer protection, and then the other one is privacy. So my question is, what lessons can Asian countries learn from more established free trade agreements like NAFTA between Canada, US, and Mexico, and the EU free trade agreements in terms of protecting data privacy and consumer protection? Thank you.
That's an interesting and complicated question to answer. Okay, let me try my best to respond to it. Of course, different countries would also have their different considerations. So whenever we negotiate these kinds of trade agreements, what are the goals of the country, for example, or what do they wish to endeavor? Do they wish? There is some view that there is a dichotomy between, for example, consumer protection and the total liberalization of free flow of data. It will depend on what spectrum the country is locating itself in terms of its policies. Okay, so in terms, to directly answer the question on what would be the best practices that we can learn from other economies, particularly those that you've mentioned. I think that question will be better directed with what the kinds of initiatives we already have in the region. So, for example, I will go back to the example of the Singapore-UK Digital Economy Agreement. Okay, so it's a bilateral agreement that was an enhancement of their existing bilateral trade agreement. So one lesson, or at least one strategy that we can learn from it, is building from our existing free trade agreements, and then from there we can progressively enhance the coverage, the depth or the breadth of commitments that we already have. We don't need to create entirely new. I don't think that it would be also strategic or wise to start from scratch and negotiate a completely different deal. And we already started with our existing commonalities and our existing agreements with economies. And I think to some extent, this is what is being practiced in RCEP as well. So RCEP is, well, briefly an amalgam of the existing ASEAN plus one FTA. So there's already some sort of a common ground. Okay? And then you agglomerate it further. And then some economies will also agglomerate it further. That's why you have mega regional trade agreements. And so essentially, I guess one learning that I can realize from what we've seen in the free trade agreements that we've analyzed is one step to do it is a modular way, because digital economy agreements and DEPAs are actually modular in a way na they first select the key issues that they wish to negotiate, and the other economy committed members are also willing to agree upon or at least comply upon. And then little by little, if some other economies also wish to join the agreement. So for example, if I'm not mistaken, the DEPA agreement, Korea is also interested in joining the DEPA agreement already. It started with 4 economies. Now some other economies are joining. And that's how you increase the probability of harmonizing across different economies in the region. So I think that that's one learning that we can clearly apply, and what's already happening here in Asia Pacific, or at least in developing Asia.
Okay, I think we're already done with this panel. So thank you very much, everyone, for your active participation. Thank you, Sir Gerald, for being a trooper and facing all of those questions. So, Ma'am Emma, I was ready to ask her something, no? But already left. Okay, but anyway, I think we have time for a health break. So 10 minutes for this, no? And then we will continue with our second panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sir. As what Dr. Sir outside. You can also access our comfort rooms outside the hall. Our team can answer you if you need any help. We will resume the session by 11:15 a.m. Thank you.
Hello.
Morning. We'll resume the forum in 2 minutes. The participants go down and maybe also. Morning once again, and thank you for morning once again, and thank you for coming back. Earlier today, we had Dr. Babes Orbeta, the president of PIDS and lead convener of PASCN, Father Bobby Yap, president of ADMU, for their respective opening remarks. We had Director General Punsalang on his keynote talk regarding our theme, Empower, Include, Grow, Unlocking Inclusive Growth in the Philippines and the Asia-Pacific region. We have expanded the conversation through 2 panel discussions. ADMU has facilitated the first session on innovative and sustainable solutions to society's most pressing challenges. At this juncture, we will be transitioning to the second installment of these panel sessions. The Philippine APEC Study Center Network is the lead facilitator for this session. The panel's topic is on innovation and digitalization, promoting transition to the formal and global economy. The moderator is Dr. Jocelyn Celero. Dr. Celero is an associate professor at the Asian Center of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She obtained her PhD in International Studies at Waseda University, Tokyo, Japan in 2016. Her dissertation examined the transnational life trajectories of 1.5 and second-generation Japanese Filipinos. In 2022, she returned to Waseda University as a JASSO follow-up research fellow. She has published on migration and transnationality of Filipino migrants and Japanese Filipinos. Since 2019, she has served as a research consultant of the UPCIFAL Philippines. Dearest colleagues, let us give a round of applause to Dr. Celero. Ma'am, you have the stage.
Konnichiwa. Good morning. Thank you so much, PASCN, for inviting me to. It's a privilege to be moderating the second panel, which is on innovation and digitalization, promoting transition to the formal and global economy. You might ask, what does a migration studies scholar or Japanologist do in a symposium on development? As a research consultant for the UPCIFAL Philippines, we do engage with civil society, with government, academia, through various projects that mainstream the UN 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. So I also do something related to development goals. So I guess that's how fits me into this occasion. So this panel aims to engage all of us, on the recent developments and emerging issues in the Asia Pacific region pertaining to innovation and digitalization. Inform us on how these developments promote or impede transition to the formal and global economy of the most vulnerable sectors and segments of the societies, given that the Asia Pacific region or globally, I think one of the primary challenges that impede innovation and sustainable development has been informality. There's a wide scale informality. The organization really plays a critical role towards formalization. The panel also engages with the efforts of the regional blocs such as the ASEAN and APEC regarding the matter of inclusion and recommend policy areas for cooperation and ways forward for inclusion to the global economy through innovation and digitalization. Just like the first panel, we have 2 distinguished speakers. Our first speaker is online. He's online. Mr. Eldo Simanjuntak. Mr. Simanjuntak is a researcher at the APEC Policy Support Unit, or PSU. And prior to joining APEC, he was a consultant for the World Bank office in Indonesia, where he worked on local infrastructure financing under the Regional Infrastructure Development Fund, or RIDF program, as well as on the distributional impacts of fiscal programs within the bank's poverty and equity practice. He was also previously a teaching assistant at Universitas Indonesia. With the APEC PSU, he has worked on issues related to informal economy and services trade restrictions. Our second speaker is Dr. Ramonette B. Serafica. Dr. Serafica is a senior research fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, specializing in services policy, regulation, and trade. Dr. Serapica is currently examining regulatory and competition issues in the Philippine digital sector. Our first speaker will talk about the 2024 APEC Peru theme, Empower, Include, Grow, while our second speaker, Dr. Serapica, will talk about ICT regulations. So I'd like to give the floor now to our distinguished speakers. You have 10-15 minutes each.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Salero, for the opportunity and kind invitation to share our works in APEC PSU on the issue of informal economy and digitalization. We have two recent policy briefs on this issue, and I would like to highlight that the discussion today that we share here are our views and not of the Secretariat or APEC member economies. May I share the materials, if I may? Okay. Thank you. So, to start with, informality has long been a problem, and in some places, it remains stubbornly high. Within the APEC region itself, we estimate the size of informal economy to be at 13.4% of GDP in 2020. This is a quite reasonable figure, but actually this masks the wide differences among economies, with developing economies tending to have higher share than the developed ones. Also, more importantly, such measure is only one way to see the issue of informality, which could be approached through different angles. For instance, it may be important to distinguish between informal labor and that of informal firms and the informal activity itself. To see why, we could see how the lower size of informal output in some economies, as you see on the screen, mask the fact that informal employment is one of the main sources of livelihood for a swath of the population. This is a phenomenon that especially relevant in Southeast Asia. So why is informality an issue? Some might argue that to work is better than being unemployed, which is of course is a sound take if we look into solely from the perspective of providing livelihood. However, there is also an issue itself with the shadow economy. From the workers' perspective, as we saw during the pandemic, informal workers tend to be more vulnerable to external shocks because they earn less, and then their income is more fluctuating than formal workers. Sorry. This also explains the strong relationship between formal employment and also poverty rates around the world. Couple this with the fact that protection by regulations and access to social services and safety net are usually tied to formal employment. From the firm's perspective, for informal firms usually have lower labor productivity, significantly lower labor productivity. They face scale issues, typically small in size, lacking innovation, and mostly run on subsistence purposes. So it makes it difficult for them to obtain credit to expand their businesses. And also another thing is that might be relevant to policymakers. Pervasive informality also implies revenue loss for the government, as it is when unreported and it represents an untapped revenue sources. It is estimated that about $1.85 trillion is forgone in about 13 APEC economies because of the informal economy activities. So there is the issue of informality, and then at the same time, the APEC becomes more digitalized. More people have access to internet now, mobile phones and other digital infrastructures than ever. Just a decade ago, about 1.4 billion people have no access to internet, but now it is down to 700 million in the APEC region. Still a lot, but nonetheless, it's an achievement. Access is also enhanced with cheaper data plan. So let's say in Southeast Asia, it used to be about $12, but now 10 years later, it's about $5. So with improved accessibility, digital accessibility, the way we live, work, and trade are also changing. In terms of trade, a big chunk of intra-APEC trade now is in digital. About two-thirds of this digital trade in the form of digitally ordered services and goods like cross-border e-commerce and SaaS, while the rest are digitally deliverable services like financial and insurance services. In the labor market, we see new forms of employment are emerging. Many companies are now shifting to hybrid or even fully remote arrangements, which of course provide some flexibility or even too much flexibility, like what I'm doing right now too. While formal works can now be done remotely, digitalization makes it easier to engage in informal work. We see people doing gig works, firms engaging in digital contracting, digital nomadism, and so on. Then we also have ride-sharing drivers who are not employees and may not have a formal arrangement in place. So the effects of digitalization might go both ways. It could facilitate transition to formal economy, or in other case, promoting informal economic activities. Now, the question is then how to promote the transition to formal economy. Unfortunately, given the different nuances of informality, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. But it will be helpful if policymakers first understand the root causes in the economy's context. As we can see in the screen, we have a useful taxonomy which groups informality into three groups. The first one is the survivor type. These are those whose remuneration is too low and too low to become formal regardless of the entry cost. So the issues is not about the cost or the bureaucracies or stuff, but they lack the human capital and technical issues to enter the formal economy. Then the second type is type 3. I'll go to type 3 first. These are the contrast of the type 1. So they have higher productivity, and they want to comply actually. They want to enter to formal economy, but they are kind of forced into the shadow because of the high entry costs. And by cost, I mean not only the registration costs, but also other tangible and non-tangible costs. And this happens because of the bureaucratic barriers, regulations, procedures, and stuff. For instance, in Singapore, to register a business, to start a business, we need about 2 days and costs about $200 US. But in Peru, let's say, it takes a month and then it costs about 550-ish. So that's the issue with the type 3. And then lastly, the type 1. This is the trickiest type to address because all these factors, these three factors actually incentivize or contributes to them becoming informal. These are those that are just productive enough, but they chose not to do so because it is more profitable for them to engage in informal activities, perhaps to avoid tax, social security contributions, or other things. This is the case like in Indonesia, where just over a half of SME surveys they said that actually it's not costly, but they think that it is more profitable for them to stay informal, so they stay informal. So, regarding the digitalization itself, this brings us to how digitalization could help promote the transition. You may see that digital solutions are particularly helpful in three areas. I will depart from this abstraction and skip to some good examples from some APEC economies. In China, they have a digital system where they establish a kind of system to improve workplace protection for rural migrant workers who used to back then work informally through oral agreement with their foreman. So what they did, they require the contractors to directly contract the the workers, and then they mandated them to do real name registration of the workers through some online systems with assigning them to special bank accounts, wage payments, and stuff. So wage payments are done online, and then this system leverages the use of mobile internet and then big data and stuff to maintain or to maintain the surveillance, to maintain whether they follow the regulations. The system seems to be effective. Like for instance, in Zhejiang province, we see that the case of wage arrears have fallen by 8.4%. In Peru, they also have similar systems asking businesses to register workers. So they saw increase about 1 million registration of workers between 2008 and 2013. Another good example is in Mexico. They have tablet projects, which offers free internet connection, sales and billing electronically, point of sale terminal, which apparently allows the registration of 26,000 workers in the first year, and also benefited about 89% of the beneficiary SMEs. So we see that digital solutions actually may facilitate formalization, but as many other things, there are also challenges. One is about the digital divide, which I have mentioned earlier about the infrastructure and the affordability. And then another thing is on the issue of cybersecurity and privacy. They have informal workers and firms have less exposure, and then particularly vulnerable to cybercrimes, and may not know how to respond if they are affected by it. And then the issue of data portability. Absence of this portability may prevent the users, in this case informal firms, to leverage and benefit from their data across platforms. Let's say in case of creditworthiness, if digital transaction, invoicing, and registration are not particularly portable between across platforms, it could limit their ability to seek credits from other providers or other banks, let's say. It is also important to note that there is no direct positive causal relationship between digitalization and formalization, but it facilitates the transition to formal economy itself. So to end the discussion, I would like to reiterate again that digital solutions may facilitate the transition away from informality. However, policies need to be targeted based on the prevailing circumstances. In this case, we saw that type 1, type 2, type 3, so which characteristics are more prevalent in the economy. And then there are several areas that policymakers may focus on, but I would like to draw your attention to three particular areas which are relevant in APEC-wide context. First, I mentioned about the digital divides. It is still a problem in some economies, and thus we may look into policies like improving access, lowering costs, and promoting digital literacy. And then the second one is related to the issue of digital literacy and the rise of cybercrimes. It is critical for policymakers to raise awareness and enact proper regulations to improve trust in digital solutions. And lastly, on the issue of regional cooperation, which is pretty relevant to APEC, there are some APEC roadmaps related to digitalization, which could be potential for such cooperation. We have APEC Internet and Digital Economy Roadmap, also APEC Roadmap on Digital Financial Inclusion. This might be a starting point to tailor policies to address informality, but also at the same time increase digitalization or making use of the digitalization. Of course, there's more to the issue, and unfortunately, we have limited time to discuss. So if you would like to read more about our views, we have two policy briefs, which you may access by scanning the two QR codes on the left. And finally, I would like to thank again the Philippines APEC Study Center and Ateneo de Manila for this opportunity. I yield back to Dr. Celero, and thank you for your attention.
Magandang umaga po or magandang takay. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to talk about ICT regulations and how it relates to this year's theme of inclusion, empowerment, and growth. Before I proceed, I'd like to thank Ms. Queen Oren for assisting me in the preparation of this presentation. Next slide, please. So I will first explain how ICT regulatory reform is aligned with APEC programs. Next, I will give an overview of the state of broadband access and discuss specific reforms that have been implemented in recent years. I will then conclude by identifying areas for improvement in ICT regulation. Next slide, please. So you might be wondering what ICT regulations have to do with APEC, given that it is known as a trade and investment forum. This figure shows the high-level mechanisms for cooperation in APEC that are relevant to the regulation of ICT. So these are the enhanced APEC agenda for structural reform, the APEC Services Competitiveness Roadmap, and the APEC Internet and Digital Economy Roadmap, or IDER, which has been mentioned by Assistant Secretary Punsalang. It has identified various areas of cooperation, which include digital infrastructure, interoperability, universal broadband access, and digital regulatory coherence and cooperation, among others. Next slide. So here I briefly talk about the connection between the two streams. The figure on the left shows the openness. That openness is the central driver of services competitiveness, but it interacts with the other drivers, which include infrastructure, innovation, human capital, and regulation. So regulations are important as they serve as, because although they serve a legitimate purpose, they can also affect the competitiveness of services. For example, when they add to the cost faced by service suppliers. Moreover, cross-economy divergences in regulation, as mentioned by Mr. Pascua, can significantly increase trade costs, particularly for SME. Now, there is an overlap of the services policy agenda in APEC and the four pillars of the EASR, representing the essential components of structural reform. So these are creating an enabling environment for open, transparent, and competitive markets, boosting business recovery and resilience. Number 3 is ensuring that all groups have access to opportunities for inclusive, sustainable growth, and greater well-being. And then the 4th pillar is harnessing innovation, new technology and skills to boost productivity and digitalization. So these APEC tools can help us understand and identify the necessary reforms to achieve inclusion, empowerment, and growth. Next slide. Okay, so if we want everyone to benefit from digitalization, we must ensure access to internet services. According to ITU estimates, in 2022, 72.3% of individuals were using the internet. Out of 100 people have fixed broadband subscription, while 70 out of 100 people have active mobile broadband subscription. Now, in terms of prices, mobile broadband has achieved the affordability target of 2%, and this is an international benchmark, 2% share of monthly gross national income per capita, but fixed broadband is still very expensive in the Philippines at 11.26%. So this is way above the international target. In terms of speed, both fixed and mobile broadband has generally increased or improved in the last year. Next slide. So this figure gives a better picture of the digital divide, and this is from the World Bank. It shows that the National Capital Region was the only market where more than 30% of households had access to fixed wired broadband. And in other provinces, it was less than 10%. Next slide, please. And in this slide, we show how, this is from the World Bank again, it shows how we fare, the Philippines, how we fare in the region, in ASEAN. The Philippines lags behind its peers and the ASEAN average in terms of access, speed, and cost. Okay, next slide. So in recent years, there have been significant policy and regulatory reforms in the ICT sector in the Philippines. The institutional and governance framework was strengthened with the creation of the DICT and the release of the National Broadband Plan. Other reforms were a mix of competition, liberalization, and facilitation. A new license was awarded in 2019 to break up the duopoly in the mobile market. In 2021, access to satellite services was liberalized. And then in 2022, the Public Service Act was amended, removing foreign equity restrictions in telecommunications and other industries that are considered public services, but not utilities. Now, in terms of facilitation measures, there's the DICT also released a common tower policy, and there are a number of joint issuances from different government agencies to rationalize the process and requirements for granting permits. Moving forward, the development plan has also identified other reforms, which include institutionalizing the National Broadband Plan. And we learned last week that the DICT is now going to launch the National Broadband Plan 2.0. We also learned, and also another priority for the government, as identified in the plan, is the passage of the Open Access in Data Transmission Bill to liberalize the building of networks and access to spectrum, particularly for rural and geographically disadvantaged areas in the country. And this is now, there's a new bill called, it's the substitute bill for the Open Access in Data Transmission Bill, and it's called the Konektadong Pinoy. Okay, to answer the question of Ms. Mela, there are other relevant laws which will help strengthen the ecosystem of the Philippine digital economy. Note that these policies are aligned with the drivers of competitiveness that I mentioned previously. So in the book that PIDS released last year, we talked about the different policies and regulations in the different areas of the economy, such as commerce, smart city, fintech, and others. Okay, so We know that the impact of reforms takes time, but the entry of Starlink, for example, can be attributed to a combination of liberalization and facilitation measures, which shows the importance of pursuing a combination of reform. So according to the law firm that assisted the company, the EO that liberalized access to satellite services enabled Starlink to register as a satellite systems provider and operator and get bandwidth from its own satellites. And as a vast provider, it could sell internet services directly to end users without the need of a congressional franchise. Another factor was the speed of regulatory approval. It took them 30 minutes, the NTP, once they had received the complete set of documents. And then finally, the Public Service Act amendment allowed Starlink to Philippines to be 100% foreign-owned. So this is a clear example of how updating ICT regulations contribute to inclusion. Satellite technology can provide internet access in geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas, so it is especially suitable for the Philippines. Moreover, we can rely on this technology to provide reliable internet even in times of natural disaster. And as mentioned by Dr. Porio, the Philippines is ranks first in terms of disaster risk according to the World Risk Index. So this kind of technologies are suitable for the Philippines. Next slide, please. So there are still a number of regulatory impediments that we need to address, especially the artificial barriers or those created by government that limit market entry and expansion. We also have to manage natural barriers, such as the limited radio spectrum. So we need a national policy to ensure optimal or efficient use. Additionally, access regulations need to be strengthened so that smaller firms are not discriminated against in terms of rates or quality of access. And of course, to enforce these regulations, we need an independent, credible, and competent regulatory authority. And so these are some of the key challenges, and the other recommendations will help improve the functions of the regulator if they are able to monitor industry performance and have the data that we need. So as a network of researchers, PASN and the students, you can look at these issues in a systematic way and also tap the resources available in the different APEC fora. So in the final slide, we listed the references which talk about the various ways that ICT regulations can contribute to towards inclusion, empowerment, and growth. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Serafika, for the very comprehensive presentation on the role of ICT regulations toward empowerment, inclusion, and growth. And also Mr. Simanjuntak online for tackling informality as a really broad, issue or challenge that prevents sustainable development and informalization of APEC economies. So I'd like to open the floor now for questions, some insights from attendees on site, as well as our online participants. Who would like to raise the first question? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jake Remoto and I'm from the province of Camarines Sur. Well, from someone who lives in an area where digital connectivity is sometimes sporadic or even wala talaga, I have a question to Dr. Serafika with regards to the laws that you have presented, yung mga Republic Acts and all the policies with regards to the ICT. Don't you think that we have many laws that make the digitalization more complicated because imbes na magkaroon tayo ng codification of all these laws, nangyayari po every year. Different legislative bodies present different agendas. Especially now na nakikita ko, it rather hinders talaga. It hinders sabi ko nga kay Professor kanina, kung tayo dito sa Pilipinas, we're still in the digitalization age. Makikita natin in our neighboring countries like Singapore, Korea, and Japan, they are already, sabi ko, nasa IA stage na sila, hindi na smart cities ngayon, AI cities lang. So, don't you think this laws hinders the digitalizations of our country?
Okay, salamat po. Marami nga pong batas na dapat nating tanggalin. I think yun yung unang nabanggit ko, lalo na yung barriers to entry. So, for example, the requirement of a congressional franchise, hindi po yan ginagawa sa ibang bansa. Tayo lang po ang gumagawa noon. Kaya, so that's a barrier to entry. And I mentioned the substitute bill called Konektadong Pinoy. The idea is to remove this particular requirement for those that are participating in the data transmission industry. So in other words, if you only plan to establish an ISP in your region, in your province, why do you have to get a national franchise? So yun po. So let us rally behind our congressmen and tell them that to support this initiative because it will really make a significant improvement in terms of removing those barriers to entry. Now we also have barriers to expansion. So these are all the permits and the licenses that service suppliers have to go through when they want to, for example, establish their services in a particular jurisdiction. So that's another set of barriers. And for this, you already have the ARTA. It's supposed to streamline the requirements. And as I mentioned, even the president issued an executive order last year. So medyo mataas din as opposed to the issuances by the different agencies. Again, to streamline the regulations in terms of permits and licenses. So yes, I agree. We have so many laws. And again, that particular requirement of a congressional franchise, that's really something that should be addressed.
Any more questions from the floor?
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Joshua Picar from 3AB POS MPM. And my question actually is a bit answered na for Ms. Rafika. But I'd like to ask a follow-up question. And that should ISP or the internet access in the Philippines remain in the private sector or should they be transitioned in the government, which is to streamline the process and better internet access in the Philippines? Thank you.
So I don't think you really want government to be providing service. So be careful what you wish for. I think that is the first lesson. The thing is, we have to employ a mix of strategies. So you have the private sector taking the lead, and that's historically that has been the case. And if you have the private sector taking the lead, then the one approach of the government is to ensure that there's effective competition, right? And create the enabling environment. And then facilitate the expansion of ISPs by, again, removing all those restrictions and making it easier for a company to actually provide a service. But ultimately, as you know, in the graph that I showed, unfortunately, blue is not a good thing. It shows the extent of the digital divide. So there are still areas, actually significant portion of our population that are not do not have access, and therefore there's still a role for the government to provide these services. Perhaps not directly providing it because you don't want the government to be providing the good or the service if there's a private sector that can do it. But at least the government can make it a public policy to provide the funding for these types of interventions. And that's why we have the free Wi-Fi for all. And what else? The Tech for Ed, which is now has been modified. And then there's a what's up? It's called a PBB or something. They changed the acronym. But at any rate, you have government interventions to make sure and publicly funded to make sure that yun nga, the internet services are provided in the areas where private sector cannot really uh, provide the service in a market determined or competitive manner.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Christopher Roberto from 4BS Applied Math. So I actually have questions for the both speakers, if you would allow me. So for Sir Eldo, I would like to ask, given that digital solutions can facilitate formalization, what initiatives in Indonesia that the Philippines can adopt? And for Ma'am Serafika, is it feasible to introduce a new telco competitor to reduce broadband costs and increase accessibility? Thank you.
Hello?
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
hear the question?
Yes, I heard it. I heard it. Is it my turn or Dr. Serafika?
Your turn.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for the question. I think in the context of Indonesia, uh, I would say we are about the same. So, but how Indonesia? What are the case like the example of cases of using digital solutions in Indonesia for to 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 formalize firms or workers. As you see, we have quite big e-commerce in Indonesia. Like we have Tokopedia here, and then also Bukalapak and other. So, what the government do here is to engage in this with these platforms to provide to like to how do I say it? To encourage them to use digital payments. So we have now QR payments, QR based payments. So now stalls uh, and then stalls and then shops putting up a QR code. The aim is to encourage more use of the digital payment. These digital payment are some of them are offered by this e-commerce platform. So by encouraging them to use digital payments, we encourage them to use digital solutions like digital invoicing and then digital recording of sales and stuff. And then this also helps these firms to be in a way registered or to be in a way informalized. So you have this, you can track their sales. Now you can tap into their revenues or sales revenues for tax and stuff. So that is one particular example that I might highlight. Also, another thing is the use of national ID card. So it's now electronic. So with this electronic ID, I think the Philippines also have it, PhilSys, if I remember correctly. So with this one, you can actually now open a bank account, apply for bank loan, simply like it simplifies the verification steps, which back then used to be require lots of documents. I think those are the two examples that I could provide for Mr. Chris in this case.
Thank you.
So, the question about the introduction of competition. So we know right now the market is dominated by two vertically integrated companies, but it is still, and then there's a third telco. There is still room to increase the competition in the market by, as I mentioned, removing the various barriers to market entry and making sure that, again, I mentioned one is about strengthening the access regulations because the fact is for telecommunications, you still have natural barriers. So, for example, as I mentioned, the spectrum and also the technology is such that you cannot have, say, 100 telcos operating. So the best that the government can do is really remove the barriers to the artificial barriers to entry. Make sure that regulations are such that non-discrimination is enforced. And then in terms of the natural barriers, make sure that, for example, the assignment of spectrum is done in an efficient manner to make competition pa rin. And it's important to also have a very, as I mentioned, a competent regulator because at the end of the day, they are the ones and in conjunction with the other institutions like the PCC that will ensure that there's healthy competition in the market. The thing about ICT as well is that even if there is there's limited competition between or within a particular modality, there's competition in terms of the different technologies, right? So you have now choices if you want mobile, fixed, satellite. So that's another way to introduce competition.
Are there more questions on site?
Hi, I'm Diane from the University of Asia and the Pacific. I just want to, this question is for the first speaker, regarding informal economy. So, given that there are a lot, that like in Southeast Asia, we still have a lot of people under the informal economy. Are there incentives that are given to them so that they will be enthused or enticed to transition to formal economy? Because being in an informal economy and given also like most of these people have like a lesser educational background, it's more comfortable for them to be the same or just to continue life as is. Thank you.
That's for the first speaker. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Eldo.
Thank you, Ms. Tim, for the question. The issue of digital literacy actually is a bit hard to tackle, you know, when you see that people feel that why should I register? Why should I formalize when I can just do the business as usual, like selling stuff? So what can be done with them? I think I'll of course education or like training of them, like showing them what's the benefits of formalization would help. But I think real examples would be more intuitive for these people because maybe they're not really really know how is it exactly affect us like in real case. So let's say Mexico actually has a good example, like a good a case to implement. So in Mexico, they have this tablet project which offer SMEs, like informal SMEs, a year of free internet connection. So they provide tablet with free internet connection, and then also they provide point of sale terminal so to encourage them to digitally record sales and then invoice, and then also provide assistance for them to register the employees. So not only the firms being formalized, but also the workers are being formalized. But it doesn't stop there. Actually, they also provide some assistance or trainings on how to use these tools effectively. So not only providing them the tools, but then also providing them how to use this. Usually in many policies, they only provide the tools and then leave the users like on their own device. So I think the part of training them, assisting them on how to use digital solutions actually would increase or would enhance the effect of digitalization in helping them to transition to formal economy. I think that's from my, yeah.
Thank you very much. As much as I would like to make a follow-up question, I was already told this is the end of the second panel. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Simanjuntak, for joining us online. Also, Dr. Serafika for graciously responding to the questions from the floor. This ends the second panel. I'd like to turn you over to John Louis for the rest of the program.
Thank you to PASCN and Dr. Solero for facilitating the second and final panel session. Hope our participants were able to get insights from the discussions from our experts. May these panel sessions be thought-provoking enough to inspire you to identify key research areas to pursue under today's plenary topics. At this point, we will proceed to the awarding of certificates of appreciation to our speakers and moderators. May we invite Dean Tuanyo on behalf of Father President and Dr. Orbeta to award the certificates. Let me read the citations. Can I get a copy of? PIDS, PAACN, and Ateneo School of Government to award this certificate of appreciation to Mr. Marcos A.S. Punsalang for imparting his valuable insights and inspirations at the PACN ADMU Symposium on Empower, Include, Grow, Unlocking Inclusive Growth in the Philippines and Asia Pacific region, organized by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies and Ateneo de Manila University, given on the 13th day of June 2024 in Quezon City, Philippines. Signed, Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr., President of PIDS, Father Roberto C. Yap of the Society of Jesus, President, Ateneo de Manila University. A round of applause to Mr. Marcos A.S. Punsalang. Thank you so much. The same certificate of appreciation is awarded to our presenters, to Mr. Gerald Gracius Y. Pascua, Mr. Eldo Simanjuntak, and Dr. Ramonet B. Serafika. A round of applause. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Pascua and Dr. Serafika. Another certificate of appreciation is awarded to our moderators, Dr. Sir Percival K. Peña Reyes and Dr. Jocelyn O. Celero. Thank you so much, Dr. Sir and Dr. Celero. Before we proceed to the final speaker, I was told that we are going to have a group photo op. So maybe we begin in front. Tapos. Okay. So may we request again our distinguished speakers, moderators, to please come forward. Tapos the other one is with participants. Okay, so to officially conclude today's event, our final speaker is the Dean of the Ateneo School of Government and has been with the university for over 30 years in different capacities. Before his appointment as ASOG Dean, he was an associate professor at the Department of Economics, where he also served as the chairperson. He was a lecturer at ASOG since 2005 and served as a program manager for the United Nations Sustainable Development Program Development Goals at the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability. Our next speaker holds a PhD and MA in economics from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He also has a MA in development economics from the University of Sussex. He obtained his AD economics from the Ateneo de Manila University in 1989. Outside the academe, he served as Director 3 at the Macro Policy Unit of the National Anti-Poverty Commission, Development Associate at the Peace and Equity Foundation, and researcher for the Caucus for Development NGO networks. He is also actively involved in external networks as project coordinator for the Human Development Network and as acting coordinator for the Sustainable Development Solutions Network Philippine chapter. Friends, to give his closing remarks, let's give a hand to Dr. Philip Arnold P. Tuanyo, the Dean of Ateneo School of Government. Sir Randy.
Thank you, Louis. Good afternoon, everyone. As we draw this insightful and stimulating symposium to a close, I am filled with a sense of gratitude and optimism for the future, especially because many young people are here. And this morning, we have actually discussed the role of the academe in sustainability, digitalization, and innovation, including linking our sector with national and local government, business and civil society organizations, especially for the marginalized sectors and areas in the country. So on behalf of the Ateneo de Manila University and the Philippine APEC Study Center, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you who have made this activity a resounding success. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge our distinguished speakers and moderators who have generously shared their expertise and insights with us today. Dr. Aniceto Orbeta, lead convener of the PASCN and president of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, and Father Roberto Chanyap, SJ, president of the Ateneo de Manila University, for setting the tone of our symposium with their comprehensive welcome remarks. Honorable Marcos Angelo Punsalang, Assistant Secretary and Director General of the APEC National Secretariat of the Department of Foreign Affairs, for his enlightening keynote speech. Dr. Emma Porio, Professor Emeritus of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at Ateneo de Manila University, for impactful presentation on climate change and sustainability issues in the country and in the region. Mr. Gerald Gracius Pascua of the Department of Economics for his valuable insights into digital trade in the region. Dr. Eldo Malba Simanjuntak of the APEC Policy Support Unit for his presentation on the theme Empower, Include, Grow, which focused on addressing the informality in employment through digitalization. Dr. Roberto of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies for addressing critical issues, especially in terms of information and communication technology regulation. Our moderators, Dr. Sir Percival Peña Reyes and Dr. Jocelyn Silero, for their exceptional guidance and facilitation of the panel discussions. We'd also like to thank our host, Mr. John Luis Sabal, the Chair of the Economics Department at Xavier University, Ateneo de Cagayan, for facilitating the discussions today. I would like to also acknowledge the members of the PASCN Steering Committee who are here today. I know that Dr. Lawrence Takoykoy of the De La Salle University will be here. Dr. Julius Relampagos, the Chair of the Economics Department, University of San Carlos, Cebu, and representatives from various PASCN member universities like Tiliman University and the University of Asia and the Pacific. Let us also extend our gratitude to the various representatives of other PASCN member universities and all of our attendees here at the Escaler Hall, and those who have joined us via live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom. Your presence and participation have significantly enriched our discussions. The theme of this symposium, Empower, Include, Grow, Unlocking Inclusive Growth in the Philippines and Asia Pacific region, is of paramount importance not only to Philippine universities, but also to our nation's economy and socio-political landscape. We have explored during the discussions this morning innovative and sustainable solutions to some of society's most pressing challenges through the lens of our discussions in terms of digital technology and inclusive growth. As the Philippines stands in the forefront of Southeast Asia's digital economy, it is crucial that we leverage these advancements to foster inclusive and sustainable development. As you know, the Philippine APEC Study Network, PASCN, plays a vital role in shaping the Philippine economy and society. Through its extensive research, policy advocacy, and collaborative efforts, PASCN contributes significantly to addressing economic challenges and promoting inclusive growth to our discussions on digital divide, also to our policies that foster innovation and ensure that the benefits of economic progress reach all segments of society. Universities, particularly those within the PASCN, are essential in strengthening cooperation for innovation and sustainability. By fostering a collaborative effort, we can harness the collective expertise and resources of member universities to drive impactful research and develop sustainable solutions. The role of universities in this network is pivotal in advancing knowledge, shaping policies, and cultivating leaders who are equipped to navigate the complexities of our rapidly evolving world. Today's discussions have underscored the necessity of bridging the digital divide and addressing critical policy issues to fully harness the opportunities presented by technological advancements and to ensure sustainability in the country. The role of universities, especially in the Philippines, is very pivotal in this endeavor. Research, policy advocacy, and collaboration can contribute significantly to inclusive growth and development. However, the event this morning has highlighted the importance of increased collaboration among academic partners in the region. We hope that the signing earlier today of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Ateneo de Manila University and the PASCN underscores the commitment to fostering a robust network of academic institutions dedicated to addressing the economic, social, and political challenges in this region. This partnership aims to leverage our collective expertise and resources to drive innovation, promote sustainability, and contribute to inclusive development of our society. As we conclude, let us carry forward the knowledge and insights that we gained today and continue to work collaboratively together towards a shared prosperity and opportunity for all. Together, let us empower, include, and grow. And at this point, let me thank also our co-collaborators that have organized this forum, the PAEC Secretariat, composed of Dr. Francis Marquimba and Ms. Jean Clarice Carlos, and who have been supported by Aaron Aldich Guevara, Mary Joy Herona, and Ronina Asis, by colleagues at the Ateneo School of Government, including Mike Anthony Binduan, and also colleagues at the Ateneo Economics Department, Sir Peña Reyes, Rainer Mora, Aya Gulapa, Danny Adres, Quincy Guevara, and our interns, Silas Chu and Carla Candelaria. Thank you very much, and I wish you a productive afternoon ahead.
Once again, we appreciate your attendance today. The speakers' presentations will be available at the PIDS website at www.pids.gov.ph/events. Meanwhile, you may download a copy of the study from the link provided in the Zoom chat box and on the Facebook comments section. Please help us improve our webinars by answering our feedback form through the link provided on your screen. Please note that the e-certificate of participation will be sent to your email automatically following the submission of the completed feedback form. Your feedback and recommendations will make our upcoming events better. On behalf of the organizers, PASCN and ADMU, we appreciate your attendance and participation for today's symposium. We look forward to seeing you again in our future events here and outside Metro Manila. May we invite our distinguished guests for a PASCN networking lunch at the Escaler Foyer, and by 2 p.m., there will be a general assembly at SOM 111 for our invited representatives of the 12 member institutions of the network. I was also told that everyone who are here right now are also invited to the networking lunch. That's your incentive for staying until the end of the event. So hope to see you. Thank you, everyone, and may we all have a wonderful day ahead. Stay safe and healthy always.